Hi everyone, this is Matthew Cruz, and I will be presenting the July 2019 Supply Demand Report that was released today by the USDA. Before we jump in, I just want to show you this quick disclaimer. Let you read through that quickly. Okay, so starting out with the U.S. production for the 2019-2020 estimates, you can see here that they came in at 3.87 billion bushels. That was a little bit higher than what the average estimate was. You can see here the average was about that 13.3 billion bushel level. They kept the yield per acre estimate 166. The trade was actually expecting it to come in a little bit lower, so it was towards the higher end, but still within the range. One of the biggest differences we'll talk about was the actual acres, how that increased, and so that made up the bigger part of the difference for the increase in production. In the soybeans, they were relatively close to the trade estimates of 3.84 billion bushels. You can see compared to the 3.87, but it was reduced from last month, 4.1 billion bushels. The average trade was pretty close to, in terms of the production per acre at 48.5. They reduced that by 1 bushel per acre last month at 49.5. Taking a quick look at the wheat here, you can see that the trade was pretty close to what the average was, coming in at 1.92 billion bushels, slightly higher than last month at 1.9. Looking at grain ending stocks from last season, they increased that up to 2.34, so that was a little bit of a surprise. 2.34 billion bushels, a little bit higher than what they were expecting, and last month was at 2.19. The soybeans were pretty much right on target at 1.05 billion bushels. Looking towards next year estimates, you can see here the corn came in higher at this little over 2 billion bushels, and from last month's increase of 1.67. And so a lot of that, I think, came from the acres, increased acres that they saw as they left the production unchanged. In the soybeans, relatively close. The average was at 816 million. They came in at 795 million. So there wasn't a lot of fireworks in the report today. We did see a relatively large trading range, about 10 cents in the corn, but ultimately it looks like we're going to end up more positive for the day. And then on the wheat, right at an even 1 billion bushels, relatively close to the average of 1.03 billion. Taking a quick look at world supply, I see the Brazilian soybeans unchanged at 123. The Brazilian soybean harvest is over. They're currently harvesting corn, the second crop of corn in Brazil, and they kept that also unchanged at 101 million metric tons. I have seen some estimates for Brazilian production slightly higher than that, and so I think you might see that creep up a little bit more. They've been getting some record yields in their second crop of corn that have actually matched what they typically get from their first corn crop, their primary crop. And so a lot of that's just due to positive weather that they've experienced at the end of the season. So you're seeing a record corn crop in Brazil. This is the corn balance sheet. As we talked about, they increased the acres from this 89.8 to 91.7, 1.9 million acres, and that's where you picked up a lot of the production that you see here, increasing at 195 million bushels. They kept the production unchanged at 166. They increased the stocks from last year up to this 145 million bushels, and so cumulatively they increased the ending stocks 335 million bushels, and so they were expecting that. It wasn't a huge surprise, but maybe a little bit more than what they were expecting, but we're still below where we were a couple of where we were last year at this time at 2.3, but so far the USDA has been pretty conservative on kind of updating what they're seeing on going on out in the field. Looking at the soybeans, major change in the soybean acreage. They reduced that down to 80 million bushels, and they also reduced the production by 80 million acres, 4.6 million acres is what they reduced that by. And they also reduced the production by 1 bushel per acre, and so that reduced the production 305 million bushels. It was offset slightly, a little bit by exports, reduction in exports, but ultimately reduced the ending stocks by 250 million bushels. And so that's a pretty good jump in 1 month in the right direction. But 795 million bushels is still pretty hefty carryover. It's and so last year at this time we were at over 1 million bushels, or excuse me, 1 billion bushels, and so there's still quite a bit of soybeans there. Quick look at the wheat. Well, they didn't change the acreage too much. It was down slightly. They increased the production by 1.3 bushels up to this 50 bushel level area. And so they reduced the stock slightly by 72 million bushels down to an even 1 billion. Looking at the corn chart, this is December new crop corn. So we had a pretty big trading range today, which is to be expected on a report day like this. But at the moment, it looks like we're going to push higher. We're about 3 cents up today. What we really want to see happen is to break above this 450 level, and that'll kind of open the way to move higher. So I think it's kind of going to be in this trading range for the time being. I would look at this 420 area as being a possible buying region, and then looking for it to move higher above this 450 area. In the soybeans, we had a pretty good trading range. We're right now we're just up 1 at the moment, and so mostly mixed for the day. The report was I would say bullish for soybeans, but I think a lot of that was kind of baked into the price a little bit. And so again, I'd look for you want to see soybeans move back above this 925 area, and I would look for buying opportunities down to this 880 to 890 level. But for the time being, it looks like the soybeans haven't had a huge response to the market report today, and so some of that sometimes the trade needs a day to kind of digest those things, and so we may see a bigger move tomorrow. You can see here in the wheat had the best day. It was up 10 cents at the moment right now, almost 11 cents, and so it's kind of stopped right at this resistance level at 528, and so we want to see that move above this 530 area to kind of open the door to go higher. In kind of similar situations, look for buying opportunities back down at this 512 area. So if you're a bull, you're going to point out the obvious weather damage that's been done, all of the late planting. I think in David Cruz's reports, he talked about in Northwest Iowa region that 75% of the corn was planted in the month of June, and so it's a record amount of crop that's been planted. Is very late in the month of June, and obviously that's not everywhere, but it's a pretty extensive area, and so you also talk about the trade war has been lagging on and doesn't seem to be finding any sort of solution. If you're a bear, you're going to talk about that there's no end in sight to the trade wars, that we're experiencing long-term export loss as China and other countries develop relationships with Brazil. And Brazil, of course, is going to continue to increase their acres. They are profitable at this $9, $9.50 per bushel area, and so you're going to continue to see increased soybean production, and they're also coming off a record year in corn, and so I think you're going to see corn production increase as well. That's all I have for you right now. If you have any questions, feel free to call us in the office at 712-227-1110. Thank you and have a nice day.